Today we're going to be learning about types of reproduction, sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction, and talking about cell division that will enable those types of reproduction. So the first thing I want you to do is to, in your notebook, answer this question. What is the difference between asexual and sexual reproduction? So just take a minute and pause the video, but before you pause it, I want you to think about these things for each type of reproduction. How many parents are required for each type of reproduction? How similar are the offspring to the parent cells for each type of reproduction? Are they identical? Are they different? And are there any advantages or disadvantages for each type of reproduction? So after you've taken a few minutes and written in your notebook your responses to those questions, then you can continue on watching this video. The first type of reproduction we're going to look at is called asexual reproduction. Now with asexual reproduction, only one parent is required. So you don't have to have a mate, you just need yourself. And with that one parent cell, it will divide and form identical daughter cells. So you start with one cell, you end up with two that are clones of the parent cell. And the cell division that makes this type of reproduction possible is mitosis. And we learned about that during last unit, so you should have a basic understanding of how that type of cell division happens. So the question I want you guys to answer is, if you had a parent cell that had 7 pairs of chromosomes, I want to know how many total chromosomes do each of the daughter cells have? Hopefully you got it right and said that there were 7 pairs or 14 total chromosomes in the daughter cells, because they're going to be exact matches of the parent cell. Now, because we spent time last unit learning about mitosis, we're not going to spend any more time on asexual reproduction and mitosis today. Instead, we're going to turn our attention to sexual reproduction. So we're going to learn about how sexual reproduction can happen and the type of cell division that enables it to happen. So with sexual reproduction, you need to have 2 parents. So you have to find a mate in order for sexual reproduction to happen. And with the parents, you're going to have 2 cells that join together. And these cells are called gametes. And another name for those are sex cells. And when those gametes join together, they make one complete cell. That's the offspring. Now with sexual reproduction, the offspring cells are different from the parent cells. So they're not clones of the parents. They're going to have a very different genetic makeup. And we're going to learn about how that happens and the type of cell division that will allow that to happen. But before we can get into the cell division, there's a little bit of background information that we need to go over regarding chromosome numbers in cells. So in the picture below, you can see there's a picture of a diploid cell, and the symbol for diploid is 2N, and N refers to the number of chromosomes. Now, when you have a diploid cell, that cell has 2 of each chromosome in it. So in the picture below, you can see that there's a diploid cell that has 4 total chromosomes. It has 2 of kind of the bigger ones and 2 little ones. Now, normal cells in the human body are diploid cells. And if you remember from last class, we talked about how many chromosomes a human cell has. And we said that a human cell has 46 chromosomes, or 23 pairs. And that would be a diploid cell if it has 46 total or 23 pairs. Now, the other kind of cell that you can have is a haploid cell. And the symbol for the haploid cell is just N. And because there's only one N, that means that the haploid cell only has 1 of each kind of chromosome. And you can see that in the picture to the right down below. With haploid cells, they don't have the homologous pairs of chromosomes, so they just have half the number of chromosomes. So if we're looking at human cells and talking about haploid human cells, a haploid human cell would only have 23 total chromosomes because it would have half the diploid number. Now in humans, the type of cells that we see that are haploid are going to be the sex cells, or the gametes. So we'll see this in sperm and egg cells, and the way that these cells are made is through a special type of cell division called meiosis. And we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail. So meiosis is a special type of cell division that's used to make sex cells. And with meiosis, we start with a diploid cell, so a cell that has 2 of each chromosome, and it's going to end up as a haploid cell. And that's how we get our sex cells, or the gametes, that we use for sexual reproduction. Now, if you look at the diagram at the right, you'll see that there are 2 sets of division that happen during meiosis, meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. So the cells are going to divide a total of 2 times before they're done with this part of division. Now, the first part of meiosis, you're going to have the homologous pairs lining up, and so the homologous chromosomes find their buddy, they line up, and then you can see in the diagram that there is some recombination that happens. So you can see these 2 chromosomes, and they're exchanging some of their DNA. And that's important because it's going to help increase genetic diversity in the cells. And this recombination that happens is actually part of the reason why you look so different from your siblings, because some of the DNA recombined during meiosis to make the sex cells that made you. Now, after the recombination happens, the homologous chromosomes are going to separate, and you can see that happening in the diagram down here, where the two homologous chromosomes are each going into their own cell. When those homologous chromosomes separate, we end up with one set of cell division and cytokinesis. So now we have 2 haploid cells. However, at this point, meiosis is not done. The second set of cell division is actually going to then separate the sister chromatids. Because if you remember back when we first learned about cell division, and we said that each sister chromatid has an identical set of information on it, so we need to separate those, so those can go into the sex cells as well. So the second set of cell division, we start off with our chromosomes, and they're attached to their sister chromatid. We can see that in the diagram. And those chromatids get separated. They get pulled apart, and they move to opposite sides of the cell, and those cells split. And so in the end, we have a total of 4 haploid cells, and you can see that in the diagram where each cell has its own chromosome in it. And each of these haploid cells is unique. It's a little bit different from all the other ones. So this is part of the reason why sexual reproduction results in offspring that are so different from their parents, because they're made from unique haploid cells. So let's look at why meiosis is important. We said that with sexual reproduction that both parents combine their DNA to make the offspring cell. So if we did not have meiosis, we would have an egg cell with 46 chromosomes and a sperm cell with 46 chromosomes, and our end result would be an offspring cell that had 92 chromosomes. Now that is way too many chromosomes for a human to have. So the reason why we need meiosis is so that we get the correct number of chromosomes in our gametes. So here we have an egg cell with 23 chromosomes that was created by meiosis, and a sperm cell with 23 chromosomes that was created by meiosis. And so when those two come together, the resulting fertilized egg, which will then end up an embryo, is going to have 46 total chromosomes, which is the correct number of chromosomes for a human to have. And this last diagram is just one last look at meiosis, which is reduction division. It's cell division that reduces the number of chromosomes in a cell. So you can look at this and review meiosis 1 and meiosis 2, and hopefully it helps you understand how sex cells are made.